3 people. Wow. 3 people. 5 people. How is everybody? Oops. I made a mess. How is everybody? As soon as I make a mess on camera. Try this one instead. 4 people. Serp. 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 I know. It's tragic, Simeon. This will pick up momentarily after I've spilled some of my drink, of course. Do the few people that are here, do you hear me okay? Am I coming through loud and clear? Pretty good. Pretty good. A wildcat with no claws, definitely. I don't even understand. Why would you not choose to be a wildcat? If you had the option, like... Sure. Experience machine, why not? Now, I hope my setup doesn't betray me here and fall over or something. So where is everybody from? Tell me. Where do you hail from on planet Earth? Ontario? Where in Ontario, Curtis? Scotland. Nice. Near Newmarket. Okay. I did schooling in London, so I know a little bit of Ontario. Not really north of Toronto. I haven't spent like any time around there, but yeah. For those that are just joining, as soon as this started, I opened my beer, and it went everywhere. So, you could probably go back in the stream and see that tragedy. I think it was slightly off camera, thank God. It was like gushing. It was gushing. Thanks, Project EC. Montreal's great. Montreal's fantastic. It's much better. In London, it was lived in a basement. China. Wow. Thanks, Archangel. Oh, you got COVID a second time? Wow. Yeah. Natural immunity. Don't believe what they're telling you on those charlatans on YouTube. Natural immunity is not going to be the way to go. Well, and you know, we're all screwed. Need goes to show we need better vaccines, but that still might take time. What tragedy? The tragedy? Yeah, that's a subtle. Yeah. Are you familiar with La Fin du Monde? CCOGWE2? No idea. Where are you from, Astrom? Like, what city is that? I don't know. If you mentioned it earlier, I missed it. Oh, Shanghai. You're in China. Yeah. China's locking down again. Sorry. Um, yeah, in Shanghai. Yeah. Yeah, not good stuff. I mean, in Canada, everyone in positions of power have just decided the best strategy is to ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist, which is what can you do? We're all on our own now. I'm not like sponsored by the beer. I should hide the label. The philosophy theory bug? I've always been like argumentatively confrontational, and I guess that just kind of fed into liking to have ammunition for arguments, hence interest in some of the best arguments ever written. Kind of ever written. I'm still reeling from my mess. You're from Montreal? Or do you live there now? You're right, Brad. I was very much submitting to an illusion, a lie about our place in this world. One time, so I used to make beer, and I used to make a lot of beer, and one time, when you make beer, you need to at some point add sugar to like a big 5-gallon pail, and I added way too much sugar at once, and it created like a volcano effect, and so my entire kitchen was just beer, the whole thing, like everywhere you think it could have gone, it went, and it just on the floor. It was horrible, and it's sticky. Like it was one of the worst things. I speak a little French, Curtis. Yeah, I never claim to be bilingual because I have a long ways to go, but I try. I can read it pretty well. And I get like whenever I'm in Montreal, whenever I'm out, I'm only speaking French. Like I just do my best to accommodate and to acclimate to the French atmosphere, but I still struggle. So yeah, where is everyone else from? Tell me. Tell me. Yeah, Joey. Even right here, like probably missed it. I spilt some, and I know for however long I'll do this, the next like hour or so, I'm just gonna be smelling beer, because I geniusly spilled it. It's a dream to read French philosophy. In French, I assume you mean in French? That's funny, because I was speaking with a guy from France. Um, he's a teacher, and he actually works in China. I think he works in Hong Kong, actually. And he was saying that he understands the French stuff easier in the English translation. I don't know if he was just saying that, but I thought that was interesting. Um, Hamburg, I've been there. Hamburg is a great city. You got a nice canal. Nice canal. Yeah. Hamburg is great. I was there probably 9 years ago, 8 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. No, 9 years ago, probably. I don't know, something like that. Questions about agency? I think it depends what kind of agency. I tend to gravitate towards Actually, I don't know. I think maybe Foucault, but I don't think that's a good answer. I don't know, Chris, do you want to talk about Hegel? We can talk about Hegel. I have opinions. I've only read the phenomenology, so I still have the logic, like both logics, and then the philosophy of right, or some order like that, which I eventually will get to. So free will versus determinism. I don't know. I tend to gravitate towards free will because I don't think any being would have designed this garbage world by design. But that's just me. Sense certainty, yeah. Are you certain of your senses? Are you certain, Chris? I mean, I tend to think that Hegel read Kant poorly, and that's when we get sense certainties. Talking about that. Huda, how has the dissertation, the PhD journey been so far? A lot of annoying things. You have to deal with so much crap, and yeah, it'd be a lot to get into now. I think that I tend to discourage people from pursuing one, with the caveat that like if you really want to do it, but it's a big commitment. You know, there's no job prospects at the end of it, and the professors are overworked, so you don't get a lot of support. And it's not their fault; they just have a lot on their plate, and it's hard to navigate that. But there are good things. I really recommend people do master's degrees. I think that's great. A 2-year master's. Oh, we get to write a thesis. The dream. But something like the dissertation is a little bit. It's a lot. Is analytic philosophy just math with more letters? If you think it is, let's go with that. RG Collingwood. I may have. I'm not entirely sure though. You'd have to. That name is so familiar, but I don't know. Getting into critical disability literature. Yeah, I've written a bit on that. Alison Kafer is somebody who does work in, like, I think she calls it like crip studies. I think, but yeah, Alison Kafer's work would be a good starting point, I think. But I'm not an expert in that. I don't know. There's probably better examples. Are you interested in Muslim mystic philosophers? Like, I don't know about Muslim philosophy at all. The Islamic tradition with philosophy is totally otherworldly to me, which is to my chagrin. What do I think of Schopenhauer? I haven't read much Schopenhauer. It's been a long time, so I don't really have much of an opinion right now. Doubt should not be casted on sense, but rather on the mechanism of memory and how we remember certainty. I mean, are we ever certain of anything in the present, or like does certainty always come too late? Like, is it always after the event? Rosenzweig? No, I have not. Sorry. Liquor before or after beer? I think there's some truth to the liquor before beer thing being safer. Can you elaborate on your statement about leaning towards free will being based on materialist presuppositions, that like looking at the material world and seeing how garbage it is, saying that there must be free will? Because I guess I am just using my own perception of what a deity could possibly conceptualize and using my own judgment as a filter to gauge that. But like, if there was some kind of written out plan, I hardly think that this is a being that should be lionized or should be sought after in any way because of the garbage they've produced. which is kind of besides your point, but anyways. I've heard that too, that English translations of French theory are easier to read, sure. Happy to hear about that, S. Happy to be of service. Whose work you cannot stand to read? Zizek bores me to death most of the time. Someone who I can't stand to read. I'm pretty generous. Like, Zizek bothers me just because it's boring, and who else I can't stand? Look at my books. I don't know who else. Collingwood was British idealist. Cool. Jasbir Puar is interesting on disability. Yes, that's true. I forgot about Jasbir Puar. I segued a bachelor's into philosophy into a career in talent acquisition of all industries. There's a decent market for folks that can read, write, communicate. I mean, if you say so. I'm looking forward to that day. Untitled, you gotta. Sounds great. Thanks, Ash. Sokal and Brickmont. I don't remember what they said. Probably some like it's the end of truth. I don't know. Like what I don't know what Sokal and Brickmont say about it, so I don't really know. Can you bring some sessions for PhD related topics for development communication theories? Like which ones? What are development communication theories? Do you have any texts that analyze angels and their historic use in any type of media? Yes, maybe. You look up the work of Peters. Oh my God, what's his name? John Durham Peters. He writes about angels. He's a bit nutty. In that he's a hardcore. Either he's a Jehovah's Witness or like a really extreme evangelical, but with like an entire background in philosophy. So he draws upon like Kant and Hegel and all that. Who can't stand Peterson and Hicks? He can't stand Jordan Peterson and Hicks, probably. Post-Oedipal capitalism. Yeah, I don't know about that. Zizek really is better in video format than book. Yeah, because he's funny to watch. I am still in school, G7. Is that a G dominant 7 or? How do you see difference with and repetition and D&G is differently interacting with Lacan? I don't know. I actually haven't read Difference in Repetition, so I don't know anything about it. Which is definitely a gap in that knowledge. I'm working through what is philosophy now, and it's difficult stuff. Oh, thanks, Sam. Wow, that's so nice of you. Are you into existentialist philosophy? Yeah. As far as existentialism, to me, I think of Nietzsche, and I think of Nietzsche. Yeah. Freud is on the outs in psychology as his theories are largely insane. I'm pretty sure Freud has been on the outs in psychology for a long time. If you mean like psychoanalysis, that'd be a little different. How does this affect his ideological legacy? Well, I don't know if it'll have a huge effect. I mean, we could be indebted to some elements of earlier thinkers, because no matter what, Freud will be influential, and I don't think that because he was influential on certain people and he comes out of favor, that then those people are no longer influential. I am a little bit interested in Bataille. I've only read a little bit. One day I'll get to reading it more. I like Peterson, but if you ever come to U Ottawa, yeah, U Ottawa Debate Club would love to have you speak as a guest speaker. Sure. I'm not much of a debater at all. Uh, yeah, I'm not much of a debater, but I could talk to people and answer questions. Um, how about a Baudrillardian reading of the Will Smith slap? The way so many people couldn't believe that it was real, like we've been in our simulation so long that we can't even see violence. Um, yeah, doing like Baudrillardian readings is difficult because like he made it like partly his task to never settle on like a very clear method, especially when you get into the kind of nitty gritty and his own like cultural analyses. They're very wow, Joel, thank you. That's very nice of you. Uh, the nitty gritty of that, I think that maybe what he might say, wow, see cogs, we too. It means a lot. Um, James, what he might say would be something like, you know, we become like hyper focused on that kind of violence to ignore like the violence of our lives, you know, the violence of the system. And his allusion is like, we use Disneyland to convince us that the rest of America is real. You know, we use that violence to say that, oh well, the rest of America is not violent, and we like hyperfixate on it. But I mean that's just, I haven't given it any thought really in that way. Nick Land, I would do more Nick Land, eventually. Do you know if abstract algebra, specifically group theory, is used in philosophy? I don't know. I'm sure some people would know. I don't know. I don't really know much about anything about abstract algebra or group theory. What are you doing to appease Rocco Basilisk? I don't know what that is. Journal and Mass Communication, in which we have a topic called development communication, so if possible, if you can bring sessions. I don't know what that is, unfortunately. Development, like, I'm thinking like in contexts in which there's very little communicative media, like what it would mean to introduce it into there. I'm not entirely sure. How does Hegelianism translate politically? There are left-wing interpretations like Marx and right-wing ones. What are some right-wing ones? I'm not saying they don't exist, I just don't know of any now. Certainly his like blatant Christianity is a good fuel for, it's like boomer catnip. Like, it's very easy to cling on to that as a justification for European exceptionalism, which tends to be would gravitate towards right-wing thinking. What does it even mean to be a Hegelian anymore? You know, I don't really know. I honestly, when people say they're a Hegelian, I think that they are full of garbage most of the time, because most of the time they use it to refer to like an exchange between two self-conscious beings, and how it is through that exchange, and the recognition that is cultivated in it, that identity and that subjectivity can be conferred from one to the other, and it's kind of grown out of that in this dialectical interplay. But Hegel is like, that's like the first step of spirit. Hegel's like, this is stupid. We have to go further than this. So I think some people are just read the like Lord and Bondsman part of Hegel and was like, oh yeah, I get this. I'm a Hegelian. I agree with this. But it's like Hegel doesn't agree with that. I mean, that's like the step number one. Hardest philosophy text in your opinion? Derrida stuff, I mean, is pretty hard. I struggle with Derrida. But let me think. You know what? The Critique of Pure Reason was the text I struggled with the most. The phenomenology, no problem. The Critique of Pure Reason, Oh my God. And it's funny because Kant is super systematic. He's like, these are the points, and like he's clear about it. He's like, this is the system. This is how we're going to build to this, and he's just lays it out like mathematically, which is easy enough to follow. But he uses some terms like principle or like manifold, or yeah, little things like that that are like exist at the core of his ideas, and unless you know exactly what he meant by them, it's so difficult to progress. They're like, it's like if you're driving down a road and you hit a speed bump that's really small, but it's sharp. And you know that if you try to go over it too fast, you're going to pop your tires. So you need to like find some weird detour around it, and it takes forever. Yeah, so that's it. That's my weird analogy. But yeah, Kant's first critique was the most difficult one I've read. Favorite philosopher? If we think of the term kind of classically, probably Kant. Favorite philosophical concept? That's a good one. Maybe... That's a good one. Favorite concept? I think I like synthetic a priori a lot. I also like from Kant, and I like seduction from Baudrillard. But yeah. Have you heard the story of Schopenhauer threatening Popper with a fire poker? I'm sure that this is a joke, but I just don't get it. Because I don't know Popper really, and I don't know Schopenhauer. Dominant theory, dependency theory, and participatory theories like these. See? I don't know what those mean, though. I don't know what that is. It'd be cool if I could put up music and not get copyrighted and get banned to oblivion. Because then I can force you all to listen to music I like. And who wouldn't want that? Am I fond of Nietzsche? Yeah, for sure. Fond of Nietzsche. And do you think it should be more widely studied, considered by the average person today? I don't know. Like, yeah, the short answer is yeah. I think that Nietzsche's also like super problematic and needs to be interrogated. And I think that without like a fruitful engagement with his work, coupled with very important criticisms of it, it can lead people into very scary territories, not only for themselves but for others. Zizek is, Zizek just kind of, Zizek is someone in like radical in name only, just assumes such a title, or you know, in his clever way, like unassumes it, and that's part of the dialectical movement. Wittgenstein threatened Popper, not Schopenhauer. He was dead. Rip. And y'all know better than me. I don't know. I don't know how to. I know their work, but I don't know how to pronounce it. Koheve? Considered a right-wing philosopher, or Hegelian, yeah. Derrida, in his reply to Sokal and Brickmont said, "There isn't a criticism of the Enlightenment in my work. Is Derridian philosophy reconcilable with the Enlightenment?" Well, what is Enlightenment? I guess would be the first question to ask, because people, you know, dummies out there just like throw these terms around. They have no idea, like they don't unpack them or explain what they mean by it. Because if we take enlightenment to be emancipation from self-imposed tutelage, as Kant would have it, which is to say, it means freedom from submission to authority being like the church, by government, and it was a moment in which people could begin to act and think for themselves, according to emerging knowledge that was true. That is science. And so people could be actually properly informed based off of what they saw and experienced in the world. You know, they weren't pointing to God, and people weren't gaining authority by saying God told us to do this. Yeah. So in that case, if we take Enlightenment to be that, we don't see Derrida being anti-Enlightenment. We see him being very much an Enlightenment thinker. I mean, he's beckoning people to challenge the kind of categories imposed upon people. Nowhere in the Enlightenment project is it like, oh, men are going to act this way and women are going to act this way, even though these clowns are running around are like, that's what this is supposed to be. I don't even like talking about it. It's just so frustrating, and it's ridiculous. Would you consider yourself a leftist or a Marxist? Is it one or the other? Because like Marxists like to hold a monopoly on any kind of meaningful change, to say that unless you're a Marxist, you're not revolutionary in any way, or you're not actually working towards a better future, one that'll actually improve the world, which is, I mean, I see a lot of that on Twitter. But yeah, no, I definitely consider myself somewhat Marxist with a big asterisk. I mean, there are a lot of problems in Marx's work, and it's not Marx's fault. He just didn't have the time to finish it. But there are a lot of things that are difficult to reconcile with any kind of political project in my mind. And I find it strange. You know, I've read a lot of Marx. I don't know how anyone read this and was like, we can make politics out of this. And it's like, what? And hence the atrocities we saw as a result, which is, yeah. What does success in life look like for you? A commitment to one's own wants, as much as the world will allow you to have, I guess. It would be to live in accordance with what makes the most sense to you as you've come to through realization and thought, pondering. Did Derrida kill and end philosophy in a way? Definitely not, because the best philosophy in my mind came after him, or some of the best. I mean, there was. You'd have to say where in Derrida's work did philosophy end, because he had a long career. Because if it ended right at the beginning, what was he doing afterwards for like 40 books? I don't really have any thoughts on Stiegler. Favorite album and movie? Favorite album and movie? You know, I really albums. I really like Miles Davis's Kind of Blue, obviously. Who doesn't? Tom Waits' Heart of Saturday Night is really good. I really like that. Fleetwood Mac, Rumors. You know, I don't have the most refined taste in movie or music. But for movies, really good ones. I really like Drive, but I haven't seen that in a while. But I like Lord of the Rings. It's obviously classics. What are good movies? Always put on the spot here. I can't even think of any. Really good movie. There are movies I wish I could see again. Not necessarily because they were super good, but because they had like a twist or something that I'd like to re-experience. I like some of Kubrick's movies. Like I really like 2001. I like The Eyes Wide Shut quite a bit, and Barry Lyndon is very good. I've been wanting to watch Chungking Express again, because I like that, but that's many years ago that I saw that. Oh god, good movies. You'd have to give me like categories, like, you know, genres, I should say. Maybe that'd make it easier. My favorite musicians? Oh, depend, like, in what like singers, guitar players, pianists, favorite musicians. If there's one artist who's all around talent I wish I had, it would probably be, in their prime, would probably be Eric Johnson, who is, those who don't know, he's a guitar player and he could sing. He had a pretty nice voice. Like no, he was no, who's a good singer? God damn it, he was no Celine Dion, but yeah. Do I think it's solipsistic here? Of course it is. I mean, look at the platform. What, like, it's all solipsism. We're just, time is a flat circle, right? If I'm thinking of that right, solipsism is circular logic, right? Or am I embarrassing myself? I'm probably embarrassing myself. Kojev, what do you think of development of synthesizing philosophy with media analysis? I mean, I do that. Do you think it makes it more accessible, or do you think it threatens to dumb it down, like dumb down philosophy? Because I don't think that that's the case at all. What Foucault should you read first? Oh, Christ. Probably. I think maybe the lectures are the most accessible. Should read first. It's like, which is the most accessible? Because you don't need to read them in order. I would recommend, if you were to go to the early stuff, read the order of things before the archaeology of knowledge, because that's the order they came out in. I think I didn't screw that. Just screw that out. Whichever one comes first, read that one first. But don't read those two texts first. Read maybe Discipline and Punish. That might be the most accessible. The History of Sexuality, actually. But they're all tough. I mean, Foucault is a powerhouse of knowledge, and it's so dense. Apart from Baudrillard, can you think of other theorists, philosophers who have conceptualized atmosphere as a term? I don't know. That's interesting. I don't know. I literally Googled it before I typed my comment to make sure I had it right and goofed it up. Rip me. Be a Deleuzian? Yeah. I would identify as a Deleuzian in some ways. Who are the most important philosophers that artists, specifically painters, should study? Maybe Colasso is a philosopher who's does some work on art. I've had some artists reach out to me and ask me to talk them through some of Baudrillard's work because they want to transpose the ideas into their art. So that's done that a bit. So there's Baudrillard is there. Deleuze, I think, really fits into the art world in a lot of different ways. So, and Guattari as well, of course. Yeah. Will you think of doing Stiegler? Matt, I'll do anything for you, Matt. I will definitely think about doing Stiegler. I just don't know anything about Stiegler, so it would take me some time. But all these German Austrian names sound the same. Drive is a great choice. Thank you, Plato's Rave. Probably won't stay long, but congrats. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, McClellan. Do you hate car seat headrest? I have no idea what that means. Is the West the best? I don't know what the West is. Is Western India better than Eastern India? You'd have to ask Indian people for that. Do you think Pierre Poilievre will ever be Prime Minister? God save us. I don't even know. Who is that? Is this who is Pierre? Wait, what is that name? Poilievre? Poilievre? I don't know who that is. Is this a Canadian? I should know who that is if it is. Huh. Thoughts on the NDP Liberal deal and Liberal government in general? I'm not a fan. Well, with a caveat, I think that they're gonna be able to do good things for a lot of people. I'm not a supporter of the Liberal Party for lots of reasons. I definitely lean more towards the NDP thing, but I still have big criticisms there. But I think that they're going to be able to get some good stuff done, and it'll keep whoever the interim conservative leader. She's kind of wacky. Wouldn't want her to hold office. Have I read Heinrich? I have read Heinrich Ladmir. Yeah, I've read Heinrich. I read his text, like How to Read Capital or something, and I don't know why I read it. Oh no, I was gonna do an episode on it with someone, and it fell through. But yeah, I read it to prepare for an episode, an interview, and that fell through. So I'd already read it, and I just read Marx. I mean, all these people are like reselling what's already out there, and it's in a lot of ways the original is easier to understand. Like a lot of these, I mean, this is just a bigger criticism I'd have of academia in general. Certainly, theory and philosophy, academia, is that it's like tries so hard to use difficult language to communicate, in a lot of cases, very simple ideas, and it makes it so inaccessible. And at times, Heinrich is like that. I'm like, just read the original. It's easier. Solipsism, skepticism of other minds. Might be hard to answer, but favorite work from Baudrillard. I like his mid to late stuff the most. I think that's when the weirder stuff comes out, and it's good. Like, I like Fatal Strategies, The Illusion of the End, and Impossible Exchange. Those texts with, like, essay-style chapters. I like that because he's totally uninhibited giving out his thoughts, because I really think he was a smart dude, and very poetic in a lot of ways. And for the earlier stuff, yeah, I like all of it. I'd have an easier time listing the texts I don't like, or because they're all really, I like them all. Simulacra and simulation I could get rid of, to be honest. The consumer society and the system of objects, just get rid of them, in my opinion. The rest are, I like them all. I don't have any Borgia favorites myself. John Cassavetes films. Oh yeah, which ones? I know the name. I don't know which ones he's done though. So list them off. Pierre Poilievre is a Franco-Albertan who is the favorite to be the CPC leader. Isn't that Max Bernier's party? Wait, what? So they found another francophone. Why are they doing that? Like, I'm not opposed to that, but I just think it's interesting that the most right-wing party in Canada that represents everything to do with like Western separatism from the rest of Canada, like rural separatism from urban Canada, is being represented by a francophone, like by another francophone. Like, it's interesting. Oh, the PPC. What the hell is the CPC? Oh, you're giving me these. Oh my god, these acronyms are throwing me off. Yeah, okay. Getting a francophone. I mean, that's cool. I'm not a fan automatically. But let me look. I now that you say that, I have a suspicion that I might know who it is if I see their face. His face. Probably wouldn't like me calling him there. Nope. Don't know who this guy is. He's French? Like, is he actually a French speaker? Or does he just have a French name? What type of conservative is Pierre? I gotta know how to pronounce that. Poilievre. Oh, libertarian and a populist? Oh my god. Just. Oh. Oof. I think this is the first live stream I've caught. Happy to see you here, Aorian. Aorian. Is progress real or is change unqualifiable? Change might be qualifiable, but maybe only after the fact, where you can look back and say, "Oh, this happened," and we can trace it and look at it. Socialist communist with a long time interest in postmodernism and recent philosophy, past 200 years or so. Great. Happy to see you here, Aorian. Can I make more on accelerationism? Sure. Opinions on trans women competing in women's sports. Yeah, that's definitely a hot topic issue now. I've actually been thinking about doing an episode on that because it's interesting. Because my first gut reaction to it, that question, is to think about the ways in which people who talk about that stuff are like, hey, we just care about women. Like, we think women are going to be put at an unfair disadvantage if suddenly trans women are competing. And I'm like, have you ever cared about women's sports before? Like, ever? Really? And now, like, this is what you chose to care about? But that's kind of a bad faith argument from my end. For me to say that would be because I can't assume that these people have never cared about it before. So the best argument I know, like, about this issue is that if you are engaging with someone and they're in good faith, like, assuming that they are here to actually have a conversation about this, I think you can have a conversation that goes as follows. So you begin by asking them, you say, okay, we know that the difference between men and women, if we engage with this gender binary, is real. And we know that men outcompete women in sports, like, generally. You can't deny that. Like, there's just numerous studies done. Now, what it comes down to at this point is asking, where does this heightened ability come from? And someone who you can actually have a conversation with about this would be like evolution. So, evolution has determined it to be so, and so therefore men are just, more proficient in sports than women. So you can then say, okay, it's evolution, fine. How long will it take for evolution to tip the scales the other way, or to make it more even? And it's a hard question to answer, but you could speculate, like, 1,000 years, maybe more, 10,000 years. Like, I don't know if anyone has any thoughts. I'm still going with my imaginary conversation here, by the way. But anyways, ask them that and see what they say. Now, if you actually look at the stats of sporting events in the Olympics over the last 100 years, what you will see is that women from today are comparable to or outperforming men from 60, 70, 80 years ago or so. Now, what that tells me is that in like a generation and a half, suddenly evolution has shifted, which seems strange. Like, wait a second, if it was evolution and that was going to take 1,000, 10,000 years, why now are women like competing as men did however many years ago? And I think that the only clear answer is that it has to do with the social factors, where women are given more opportunities to compete in sports, given more opportunity, more funding given to women's sports, and so on. So many different factors, which is like still not to say that women are just like on average going to be able to like beat all men on average at like hockey or something. Like I don't know what the answer to that will be. Chances are, who knows what would happen. Probably the men would win, I would assume. But Sorry, I'm just seeing more questions. But yeah, my opinion on the matter is that like I think that the split across genders within sports is silly, and that in my dream scenario, people would be selected to sports teams based on merit, not based on gender. Which, because if it was actually based upon biological advantage given to men, then why do we stop with the distinction between men and women? Why don't we also cut out people who are 7.5 feet tall from playing basketball because they have an unreal advantage? Like it's a biological advantage that has nothing to do with skill. It's just like purely biological, no social factors at all. Like it is just 100% biology that gives them an unreal advantage. But no one bats an eye about that. No one says, "Oh, we gotta take the tall people out of the basketball courts," which would be a much more provable biological distinction that would be worth policing, which I'm not advocating for. I think people should just be allowed based on merit. But yeah, I guess those are my opinions on it. So I think trans athletes should be able to compete. If you're in Montreal, what are your thoughts on the occupations going on at unis right now? See, I don't know about that. Where? Like McGill, Concordia? Occupations, I would assume, is the French schools. I mean, francophones in Canada are much more radical than anglophones generally. In like progressive politics, anglophones are more likely to be reactionary, like screaming out in the streets about having to get a vaccine or something. Hottest philosopher? Ooh, that's a good question. Young Colasso was a good-looking guy. Hottest philosopher? I guess I bet Socrates was pretty hot back in the day. Who else? I think Derrida was a good-looking dude. Alan Watts. Yeah, what did Alan Watts? Is it Alan Watts like a? Isn't he like a motivational guy or something? I could be way off. Like he's like a pop philosophy dude or something. Who should I read to learn about phenomenology? Probably Merleau-Ponty. If you like the feminist stuff, I think that Sarah Ahmed would be a really good one too. I like her approach. Friedman fanboy. Alan Watts is? Sorry, we're yeah, really? Milton Friedman or whatever his name is? I haven't read much Bataille. I like what I did read. I think that there are some issues, obviously, but yeah. A Woman Under the Influence and Opening Night are his best films. That's John Cervantes. I haven't seen those ones. But I'll come back to these questions and points later to see that. For phenomenology, Husserl, sure. I took some courses with a woman named Helen Fielding, who's a feminist phenomenologist, and she does interesting work. Might be worth looking into. Hey, love your stuff. Would you say to someone who has strong interest in theory of continental philosophy but is hesitant about pursuing academic study? What? I mean, just read it. Go read the stuff. Like, how would you... Are you asking how you would get into it or how you would approach it? If all the well-known philosophers broke out into hand-to-hand combat, who would emerge victorious? Probably Socrates or Plato. I mean, they were all wrestlers, right? I mean, this is the easy answer, I would assume. Do you think Arendt is a bit too liberal in her understanding of Marxism? I don't know what you mean by liberal. I think that I don't remember her criticism of Marx and the human condition all that well. I think that she might have read Marx poorly, not in like because she was a liberal, because I don't know what that means, but I think that she thinks that Marx wants to do away with work, whereas Arendt finds some justification for work. And I could be wrong though. I could be wrong about that. That's how I think that's how I think it goes. But yeah, and in that case, like if I am understanding that or remembering that correctly, like Arendt just misunderstands Marx's conception of work, and I think that they actually have a lot in common in a lot of ways. But they, yeah, I think she just didn't. Yeah. How much money can you make from YouTube? What I make from YouTube right now is about $430 a month. You know, and it kind of fluctuates around that, but that's like with a fair amount of content. Like if you know what I put out, that's like 2 videos a week. So you can't like, but I don't, you know, I don't produce clickbaity stuff, and I don't have crazy thumbnails. So, you know, just do the math from there off of what I make, and that's like, that's probably like 12, 15, maybe 15,000 views a week, give or take 15,000 views a week. Maybe I'm a little bit, I could be wrong about that. Anyway, so you know, it's like, yeah, not a lot. It takes a lot of work, and I'm not doing it for a career. It's just a little extra money is nice. The only Arabic here even to subscribe? No, that's not true. I've engaged with a lot of Arabic people that have reached out to me and asked me my opinions about this stuff. I think in this moment you might be. I can't tell from all the names. What am I drinking? This isn't sponsored, but I'm drinking a beer. It's a Quebec beer. It's called La Fin du Monde, which is like, it's, excuse me, really high alcohol content. It's like 9%. So the joke is, after you're done drinking it, you feel like it's La Fin du Monde. It's the end of the world. There's no evolutionary advantages for today for that to happen. Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Yeah. Which eye is such a good eye? Oh, God. The Western civilization, the term philosophy as we use it, means Western, also known as European school of thought, and its progression over time. Do you see your study as a part of this tradition or no? Is my work connected with Europe? Not really. I don't really do much work on Europe. Is there one I don't know what the European school of thought is. Because, yeah, I don't know what the European school of thought is. If anyone knows what the European school of thought is. Have you read any of Jasper Poir's work on the queer suicide bomber? No, I haven't. I have not. McGill and Concordia, but French schools too at the moment, started with Divest McGill actually, and the others joined in solidarity. What is it like? What is the university occupations vying for? What are they struggling for? I would Google it, but that would take me away from this. I haven't really read much of Lefebvre. He was Baudrillard's supervisor, actually, for tidbit. Derrida sexy pilled. Walter Benjamin was a good. Oh wow. If they don't want trans women competing with women, would they be cool with trans women competing with men then? I mean, I don't know. Thoughts on René Guénon? I don't really have any opinions. Rosie Braidotti, I'm not a huge... Yes, I do have a video on her. I think that she takes some of the strands, she like takes all the optimistic readings of Deleuze and Guattari and just like spins it into this post-humanism that I find really problematic. It's like, she's just like totally, everything's fine, you know, we just embrace every like mutative possibility that's afforded to us by various technologies, and that's it, that's good. Which to some extent I agree with, but it's just like total Deleuzian optimism, and I find that completely counter to a lot of what Deleuze and Guattari write about. Alan Watts is somewhat pop philosophy, mostly focused on early Eastern spirituality and maybe a bit of mysticism. He popularized... Did he popularize them? I'm sure they were popular, just not here. Like, he popularized them for us. Oh, for a Western audience, yeah. Of Buddhist, Taoist, and Hindu philosophy for a Western audience. And that's cool. I don't really know much of his work. Thanks, Rajan. Scotch. You're a Scotch drinker. I don't drink that much whiskey anymore. I'm much more of a gin drinker, to be honest. If I'm drinking any hard alcohol, it's gonna be gin or vodka. Yeah, not a lot of Scotch. If it's like really good stuff, it's just so smoky, and I find that like, unless it's a really good one, it's just that's the only flavor profile, and it's fine. Like I'll drink it, but it's just boring. Whereas with like a gin or a vodka, I find the flavors can be a lot more complicated, a lot more complex. As a somewhat Marxist yourself, what is your response to Foucault, Baudrillard's critique of it? Same as Spivak. Well, no, I agree with their criticisms. I mean, it is their criticisms that make me a somewhat Marxist. I mean, their criticisms inform, I think it should inform any appropriate reading of Marx should be accompanied with criticisms to it, like any other approach. And the same with Foucault and Baudrillard. I have my own criticisms of them as well. Thank you for your stuff. It is wonderful. Thank you, M. Why are you skeptical of post-humanism? I'm not skeptical of post-humanism. I'm skeptical of Rosie Braidotti's post-humanism. Catherine Hales or Catherine Hales. Carrie Wolf I'm okay with. And there are other strands as well that I'm like more okay with. Have I read Graeber? No, I haven't. He does this stuff on money, like the history of money. I am interested in music theory. I've been taking jazz guitar lessons for a while now. I'm very interested. I'm trying to learn more and more, but it's a lot. It's a lot. Have I read Hume? I haven't actually read any Hume. No. William Blake? Not really. Just a few of his pieces. Do you think a philosophy degree is the right way to go for someone interested in continental philosophy? Depends on the program. Depends on where you do it. Because you could be very disappointed if you ended up in a place where they're just talking about like Bertrand Russell and some of the most boring stuff you can imagine. Russell's okay, it's just some of that stuff can be super boring. I haven't been to the anarchist library on Saint Laurent. No, I haven't. You just said you had criticisms of Foucault. What are they? Would love to hear it. I think that like I just finished a book reading about vaccine hesitancy, and I hope to do an episode on it. I'll interview with the author actually in the next few weeks. But in it, she talks about the ways that biomedical apparatuses specifically target like people of color in the book is about Afro-Barbadian women and how biomedical apparatuses work in that context differently against black women versus white women in that context. And it's kind of like the point of the book isn't about Foucault. There's no Foucault in the book at all, but reading it is a good illustration of the ways in which Foucault homogenizes the effects of power over entire swaths of populations without really getting into the nitty-gritty of the varying degrees of force and power that are operationalized against some people over others. And while that might at first appear to be just a limitation, and so it wouldn't be fair to really criticize him for it, I think that he framed too much of his own philosophy upon the readied application of a single axis framework to understand power. And it really comes down to his quote in Discipline and Punish when he writes that the panopticon produces homogeneous effects of power. And that's just simply not the case. But it is what guides his entire work. It's like, on the one hand, he's trying to undo or to call attention to the fact that we move from sovereign power. We've moved from a single worldview being imposed upon a people. And he's trying to talk about capillary forms of power and all these different forms of web-like power relations and so on. But it all comes down again, once again, to an exertion of force through power in disciplining people and knowledge, and it's a mirror of himself, and this is I guess Baudrillard's criticism of Foucault. Thanks, Olavo. I've been playing guitar for about 12 years. You like gin and tonic? Bourbons are harder for me, except a couple more expensive ones. I know I have to read Hume. Definitely have to read Hume. Do you read French Philosophers in its English translation? I do read the English translation because I don't have the time to sit with a French text and dig through it, which is a problem, but it just takes time. Thoughts on moral relativism and accusations that postmodernism promotes relativism. Yeah, I mean, these are also the same people who, I don't even know who's saying this anymore. Like the Petersons of the world or something, like these people. I mean, the first people to actually go after truth were the religious ultra-conservatives, and that's all these people are doing. Like, these people, like, profess Christian conservatism. Like, that is the biggest assault of truth ever. And it's like, and it's just a big distraction. I mean, it's just a big red herring. They're just doing the bait and switch thing. They're like saying, "Oh no, it's over there. The anti-truth people are over there." Meanwhile, they're selling stories about angels or whatever. Julian, my dude. Thanks, man. Which is better, more fun, Continental or Analytic? I think Continental is more fun. I think that there's value to both. I don't subscribe to the split. I mean, just for the sake of conversation, I understand what you're saying, but I think that they can really benefit from one another. I prefer Hegel because I haven't really read much Spinoza. I should make videos on Spinoza. Contemporary media theory, it depends who you're talking about. There's a lot of contemporary media theory. How can you make that claim, though? Why do you think that Christianity and God cannot be the truth? Well, firstly, is Christianity synonymous with God? Because Christianity is a story about a guy who, multiplied fish, or people who submit to the Bible. And I've been reading the Bible, and I can tell you that the Bible is the furthest thing from any truth you could ever read. And it's just funny. Christianity and God cannot be the truth. How long did it take into studying philosophy for you to confidently construct criticisms of major figures such as Foucault? I guess I'm still in a full sponge absorption mode. Stick in that mode. I mean, I try to temper everything I say, or to qualify everything I say with the fact that I could be wrong. And chances are I am wrong. And I really reserve my judgments, my perspectives, just because, I can make mistakes, and I try to always stay in that sponge-like stage. And there'll be a day when you just, you'll read one thing and say, like, that's not what I read in, like, another text, or, like, I read this other thing in this other text that conflicts with this, so I'm going to sit with this for a while. So that moment will happen naturally. You just got to read a lot. So go and read, and you'll have that moment inevitably. But take notes, too. because then otherwise you won't remember things. What jobs do you hope to have after you finish your degree? Yeah, you gotta follow the jobs. I don't know. I'll try the working in universities thing, but I'm not very hopeful. I'll I don't know. I'll go probably put up drywall somewhere or go take a trade, because I like that work too. I like doing. I do a lot of painting, like wall painting. I've done it a lot for professionally, dare I say. Zizek, I'm not a huge fan of. David, you always donate so generously. Wow, thank you so much. That's so kind of you. Julian, wow, Jesus. Being spoiled here. Great work on the Baudrillard videos. I'm doing a PhD on him right now, developing the reading that real and hyperreal are different, leaning on Derrida's difference to some extent. Yeah. That's some deep Baudrillard theory, getting into the difference between the real and the hyperreal. Because I think you can make very persuasive arguments that they are the same. If you mine the text, you could, and that's the beauty of it. I mean, that's why you're writing a dissertation on that question, or that exploring that topic, because you can mine the text to make either argument, as far as my immediate memory is allowing for. How much philosophy do you recommend for a non-academic just trying to understand some of the world around them, and what go-to texts? Classics, I guess, would be the like the I don't know, the Greeks start with Plato, Kant, but it's really difficult stuff, or what would be other good ones that are accessible? Oh, you know what's a really good intro to philosophy text that I think sets the stage for a lot of what I am interested in, and what you might have seen here, is Descartes' Meditations on First Philosophy. Really would recommend that. It's super accessible. Like, it's not hard to understand. Like, read it slow. It's a short book, and I think it would really give you. It's a really good entry point. Can you name a philosophical question or problem that in particularly troubles you? Yeah, the existence of God and death and life. All Kant's questions all trouble me dearly, and really absorb a lot of my mental energy. What note-taking methods would you recommend? Zotero, Obsidian? I write by hand. All my notes are by hand. I have I want to show you. I have 1,000 pages of notes here. Should Quebec be a country? It's a country within a country. Should it be a country? I don't know who still thinks that'd be a good idea. I think that it would be doomed as a country on its own, because it's what's just happening now is that all young people are just learning English, and I think it's a big problem, and I think that they really need to do their work to try to encourage cultural production here, and they are. Quebec culture is really, in a lot of ways, it's flourishing. The French Canadian culture and language is really flourishing, but at the same time they have a lot of work to do, and if they just became like their own country, I worry that it would actually harm the language more, and it would actually harm the culture more, which might seem strange, but it's either that or they have a super insular culture, which isn't great either. Yeah, because I recognize that French Canadians are experience a great deal of discrimination, and that needs to be addressed. Do I think Deleuze and Guattari's idea of rhizomatic thought may theoretically solve some of the issues that Afro-pessimism brings up with the fixed positionality of blackness, or there are issues with rhizomes that can't solve? Maybe, and I say maybe because with a lot of Afro-pessimism that I'm familiar with, and I'm thinking here of Frank Wilderson, think that it's good to reserve like the turning to like white philosophers to be like, let them solve the problems of Afro-pessimism. Like, let's take a step back on that. What do you think about Zizek's Christian atheism? God as a big other that does not believe in God. Yeah, I mean, this is the Zizek thing. I mean, he wants to have his cake and eat it too, sit on both sides of the fence type thinking. I am sure you have a better argument regarding Christianity, Bible, God, and cannot bother going into detail in live stream, but your dismissal is extremely facile. I mean, yeah, you sound like someone who never read the Bible, because, yeah. Saying that dude turned water into wine or fish doesn't really address the complexity. What complexity? Most texts that are complex because they're bad. So that's, or they just don't make sense and they aren't true. So yeah, people who are submit to Christianity but who say that, I don't know, postmodernists, whatever that is, that's all something we have to already interrogate, are the ones challenging truth. I mean, you've immediately lost any reputability. Zach, I am Canadian. I was born in Montreal. I wound up back here. Honestly, it's really sad how nowadays, and especially people studying postmodernist theorists, dismiss Christianity. Spread the good word, Ian. Go door to door. You'll get them. Your cult needs more people. Apologize for the probing, but think you would get a lot from Zizek's Like a Thief in Broad Daylight. I haven't read that one, but I would take the recommendation. Any text on signs, symbols outside Baudrillard and Barthes? Derrida. Signs and symbols. Yeah, Derrida, I guess. Doesn't Deleuze specifically talk about the white face that is based on Christ? To which becoming woman, becoming black, becoming minoritarian is an opposition. This makes it fixed. You're literally turning off your brain here. Ian, you should mirror your last name. Do you think Thus Spoke Zarathustra is the best intro to Nietzsche? It's easy to read, relatively. But to get into his philosophy, maybe you'd be better off with like The Birth of Tragedy or The Genealogy of Morality. Beyond Good and Evil, I don't think is a good entry point because it's tricky. I mean, the Bible is more akin to folklore than a cohesive philosophical text. Most Christian philosophy was written centuries after. Just read Stasis by Agamben, it's very good. Have you heard of it? No, I haven't. I hope you'll be able to approach this topic in the future in a more objective way. With the Bible? Oh dear. The Bible. What do you think of Bill 21? Which one is that again? Is that about French sageps? I don't want to speak out of turn. The laïcité is the secularism. Yeah, it's garbage. I hate Quebec for that. Or let me rephrase that. Like Legault right now, I hate that. Getting rid of. And the history of laïcité in Quebec is interesting. It's funny. It only became an issue when immigration started to really take force in Quebec after World War II in the 70s, I guess. A few years after, when there were a lot of like Muslim people arriving in Canada, and suddenly they were like, "Whoa, can't have that." The Thing. My friend said we've passed through postmodernism and are now metamodernism. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means either. It's all about making up words. I'm kidding. I just don't know what that means. The thing, yeah, that's a good one. Any philosopher working now that you think is making important contributions or that is exciting to you? Yeah, I like the work of Wendy Chun. I think she's at Simon Fraser. I think she's working in Canada. She does cool stuff on software. She does really cool work. I like her stuff. The Bible is a collection of books written over a very long period of time and by many different writers who copied from each other and who rewrote each other's texts. The church was created afterwards. Your attachment of this thing, this cult with truth is growing more tenuous. It's a weaker connection, Ian. You got to bring us back in, Ian. What do you think of Canadian liberal nationalism? Canada is better than any other countries because we are more progressive and accepting. Oh, I don't buy that. Yeah, I don't buy that narrative at all. I mean, they just look at how they treat Indigenous people. Like, I've decided to go way back to the ancient philosophers. Good, Shania, that's great. The fact that some people demand we should take a collection of 2,000-year-old stories seriously is insulting, as if there's anything objective or substantive to discuss. I mean, Mr. VVH, you got to deprogram these people, but we don't have the time here to do that. It's really cool to interact with you live. Thanks, Tubby. Happy to hear it. Will you at some point cover some of Rancière's text? No, I haven't. Or I will. I haven't yet. I'm sure I will at some point, yeah. Russell, atomistic theory, am I right? Sure. You did a great job with Nick Land. Would you consider doing more, even some CCRU, maybe Machinic Desire or Cyber Positive? Yeah, one day. I mean, I got a long book list. So I'll get there. Highly recommend Mann and Wainwright's Climate Leviathan. I've never heard of it, Morgan. Keep putting in the suggestions. Like, I go through this later and I'll see what people have recommended and then I can go back. What theory of truth do you subscribe to? Like, I'm a Kantian through and through. So whatever we come with at the end of that, be it some justification of God, who's to say, but I think that that's the closest system to arriving at something close to truth. What are your thoughts on contemporary Kantian ethicists such as Christine Korsgaard? I'm not familiar with Christine's work, so I wouldn't know. Many 2,000-year-old philosophies should absolutely be taken seriously, using them as prescriptive moral guidelines. Oh, it's gone. Can't read it anymore. Are you familiar with Tikin? What's your stance on them? I'm not, so I don't have a stance. What are your thoughts on the use of Emergency Act against the anti-vax right-wing extremists? I'm scared Tories will use this against Indigenous protests now. They might. That's definitely a risk. I just thought it was strange that people were allowed to just park their cars, their trucks wherever they wanted, and there was no like tickets given out at the time. Like, they're like, yeah, that's cool, do whatever you want, which is like unfathomable to me. But anyways, okay, so the many 2,000-year-old philosophies should absolutely be taken seriously, but using them as prescriptive moral guidelines without reading anything more recent is absurd. I would agree. Your take on Lament for a Nation or any George Grant would be cool. I'm not familiar with either of them, but I could check it out. This is typo, yeah. Have you read or familiar with Symbolic Misery by Stiegler and Ruins of Neoliberalism by Brown? No, I'm not. Tikin is kind of the precursor to The Invisible Committee. Sick. Climate Leviathan is speculative political philosophy about international relations in the context of climate change. Cool. I'm definitely worth the Google for me. I need to write a project on Spinoza for school. Which of his ideas are the most interesting for me to research? Probably monism, that I'm familiar with. And that Deleuze, I think, would have clung on to. What is the Invisible Committee? I don't know. Symbolic misery rules. I'm working through Siegler's Age of Disruption and Nanjing lectures right now for a grad project. Very cool. Christine helps to flesh out meta-ethical issues in Kantian philosophy. Check out Creating the Kingdom of Ends. Okay. What is the narrative which you support as to why Stalinism happened, the Bolsheviks failed? A lot of secrecy and a lot of conspiracy. I mean, Stalin was like straight up having people killed, and that didn't help. Many modern philosophies should absolutely be taken seriously, but using them as prescriptive moral guidelines without reading anything older than them, like the Bible, is absurd. I would agree with that. Yes, I'm aware that the relationality now is somewhat fixed into trends. I was more so talking about how the idea of rhizomes interact with fixed ideas of fixed positionality. Rhizomes definitely problematize fixed positionality and challenge them. What's your favorite artwork and why? Well, in my house, my apartment, I have some Basquiat that I like a lot. Not originals, but just some copies of it that I like. The Invisible Committee wrote the Coming Insurrection, which is kind of post-Left Touchdown. Awesome. Deontological or teleological ethics? Teleological. They got in trouble for allegedly sabotaging train wrecks in France. Oh. Would love for you to do some videos on Richard Rorty. Yeah, I should do that. Thoughts on Trudeau? I'm not a fan of Trudeau. Or his policies. Like, of course there are exceptions. Like, that's... it shouldn't even need to be said. But yeah. Kierkegaard is, he's kind of just a religious guy that's... His Christianity, I think, eclipses his philosophy. Whereas with, like, Hegel and Kant, especially Kant, like, he's obviously a very religious person, but you don't get that at all in his work. Or not at all. Not in the Three Critiques. Even though he solves problems without just saying, oh, it's God. Whereas Kierkegaard's like, it's God, so therefore the problem is, like, God says so. So it's like, that's not very interesting. Thanks, Spurti. Or Spurti. I'm not... Yeah. I'm going to second Rorty. Cool. I would love to do a word on sociogeny, decolonization, yeah, for sure. With those terms, I mean, they're so charged, they're so big. I would struggle, or it'd take me a lot of work, but I would get there. Would you agree that the USSR was a fascist regime? I've got an ex-Marxist Leninist friend who isn't really sold on it. I think that there are distinctions to be made between fascism and totalitarianism, and in this case I would subscribe to Arendt's views, to attribute it to a kind of totalitarianism in which there's like, it's almost like a kind of mindlessness to it, and it just founded on secrecy and just disrupting the very foundations of what it means to know things. Yeah. Wonder about death, what about it? What happens after? What's the point of life? Those are my main questions. Is it the same as what came before it? Is death the same experience as it was before life? Smith or Chris Rock. I'm pretty new to philosophy. I have a BA in history and read Nietzsche and Deleuze with relative success, but I find Kant really hard. Yeah, for me, I just read a lot of secondary literature to help me with that. Good for you, metaphysical gorilla. Yeah, it's not a good, it's not good. Not a good situation. Define fascism, it would just be like military might under like a very, very clearly laid out systematic rule that is going to try to impose that might and that rule over a bunch of different places, whereas with totalitarianism that is destined to crumble, it's just like mindlessness. Whereas fascism is a lot more calculated. In some ways, not in others. If not all knowledge is power, is it possible to know anything at all? I don't know. Self-realization, mental health, and are applicable to everyday living. Yeah. I don't really know what the best ones would be. Simultaneously use secondaries harpoon. Oh my god, okay. I'm drained. If anyone has any I should hop off of this momentarily. Can fascism even be in power without totalitarianism? I mean, that's a good question. Do they go hand in hand? I don't think so. You could have fascist states that are non-totalitarianism, but Duke or Kansas? I like Kansas. I like their logo, their mascot better. Haven't read any Dostoevsky. What should she ask? Whatever she wants to ask. Thanks for your recommendations. Joey, the Arendt is good for that. Those distinctions. Pretty hard, Ash. I haven't really tried yet, and I'm assuming it's going to be hard. Get you another beer, bud. I do have another one right here. I never opened it though. I was scared to. 'Cause at the beginning of the stream, I opened mine and it bursted everywhere. So I don't know. We should sterilize. Oh Jesus. Yeah, you should probably confront her. I'm drinking a beer called La Fin du Monde. It's a Quebec beer. Coming just from Slovenia, here a little inside info. Not many people are taking Zizek seriously. Yeah. A lot of publishing, yeah. You really take your summers when you hit grad school. Take your summers and like when you're done this winter semester, start writing something and start sending it off. Like take like a month and just try to write an article when you're done the winter semester thing and send it off somewhere if you can. I mean, I was incredibly lucky. Like I could take my summer and just work, like take the money I got from school. I didn't need to find a second job. So I'm biased in that way. I'm not a great person to ask, but if you do have the time, as soon as you're done the winter semester, don't take a break. Get right into it with the fresh knowledge you have. World Cup, sorry, I don't care. I don't care. Okay, everyone, I gotta go. I'm about to pass out. This is a very draining thing. Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you all who donated. That was very kind of you. I really appreciate it. And we'll do this again at 40K, maybe in like a year, whenever it happens. I don't know. Yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in, and yeah, I guess I'll catch you all next time. Take care, y'all.